أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم اهدي قلبي وسدد لساني واسلل سخيمة قلبي آمين يا رب العالمين. Inshallah, in today's class we will begin our lesson in Surah An Nisa from verse number. What's the ayah number? Do you remember? Ayah number? Yes, number 19. Barakallahu feekum. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have believed, la yahillu lakum. It is not lawful for you. This is not something that is permissible for you. And when it is not halal for you, this means it is haram for you. So it is forbidden on you to do what? An tarithu nisa'a, that you inherit women karha, by compulsion. Secondly, وَلَا تَعْضُلُوهُنَّ, and do not make difficulties for them, لِتَذْهَبُوا بِبَعْضِ مَا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ, in order to take back part of what you gave them, إِلَّا أَن يَأْتِينَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ مُبَيِّنَةٍ, unless they commit a clear immorality. وَعَاشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, and live with them in kindness. فَإِن كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ, for if you dislike them, فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا, then it is possible, perhaps you dislike a thing, وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا, and Allah makes therein much good. Now, in this verse, so many important lessons have been given regarding marriage, and also specifically, there were, some injustices that are committed against women are being addressed over here. So the first thing is that, O you who believe, لا يحل لكم, it is not permissible for you, أن ترثوا النساء كرها, to inherit women by compulsion. So we see that there were some injustices that were committed against women at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but we see that similar injustices continue till today. And this is why the ayah begins with Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have believed. So believers are being addressed, believers of all time, all places. So this is khitab am. This is a general address. So we cannot, just when we read a verse like this, we cannot just think about, the things that would happen at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But we must reflect on our situation today as well. That is there something like this happening today? And if something like this is happening today, then it must be avoided, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is forbidding us from such practices. Now, the first thing that is mentioned here is that it is not permissible for you to inherit women. You see, in the previous verses, we learned about the law of inheritance, right? And we learned about how when a person dies, then their property, their entire estate is supposed to be divided among their legal heirs. So here, what is being made clear is that a woman is not property. So when a man dies, his widow is not going to be inherited by his heirs as the rest of his property is inherited. So do not treat women as if they were property, and do not think that you can do whatever you want to with women just as you think you can do whatever you want to with your property. You do not get to decide the fate, the future of a woman. No, this is not correct. A woman is her own individual person. She is not a piece of property. So it is not permissible for you to inherit women by compulsion. Now, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu explained this ayah, and he said that before the revelation of this verse, what would happen is that if a man died, then his relatives used to have the right to inherit his wife. You see, if a man died, then his relatives, they would have the right to inherit his wife. And one of them could marry her if he wanted, or if they wanted, they would give her in marriage to someone else. So either the heirs, one of the heirs would marry the widow, or if they were not interested in marrying her, then they would have her marry someone else. And if they wanted, they would not let her marry at all. And they would be more entitled to, dispose of her, as in they exercised their authority. They decided whatever they wanted to do with the widow. So this ayah was revealed in this regard. So we see that this jahili custom, right, is being canceled over here, that basically the people would think that the widow of a man was part of his estate. So they would get to decide her fate. So from this narration, we see that at times they would, force the woman, the widow, to marry some male relative of the deceased, because they assumed that they had a right over her. Just as they had a right over the estate, the property left by the deceased, they thought that they also had a right over, his widow. And basically, over here, her consent and her will was never taken into consideration. And this is why it is said karha, by compulsion. And you don't coerce her, don't force her into such a situation. And force, compulsion has been used over here because her will, her like, her dislike, her consent was never given any consideration. So Mujahid explained that when a man would die, then his eldest son, all right, his eldest son had the most right over his father's wife. Okay. Of course, this is not the mother, but it was customary at the time that a man would have multiple wives. So, for example, if a man died leaving behind a wife, and also he had multiple children, then his eldest son would have the most right over the widow of the father. So the eldest son would basically get to decide whatever he wanted. If he wanted, he would actually marry his father's widow. All right. And if he wanted, he would get her married to someone else. And they would inherit the nikah. And what that means is that they would basically not give the woman any mahr. All right. Because remember that at the time of a marriage contract, the man must give a mahr to the wife, right? And we have discussed this earlier. We have learned about this earlier. But they would consider this situation to be a situation of inheritance. So basically, in some reports, we learn about how when a man would die, his closest relative would come and he would put his, garment on the widow, and basically he would make a claim to her, and he would say that, what, I am inheriting her, I am inheriting the nikah. So you inherit women means antarisu nikah an nisa. It is not lawful for you that you inherit the nikah to women. If you want to marry a woman, all right, then you have to do a new nikah, and you have to give her mahr. You cannot inherit a nikah. This is not how marriage works. And then we see that if they did not want to marry her themselves, then they would decide who she would marry. And again, whether she wanted to marry or not was completely irrelevant. Her like, her dislike was never taken into consideration. And sometimes, if a widow wanted to, marry someone else, someone outside of the family, let's say, then they would not let her marry unless and until she gave the estate of the deceased husband back to the family. So let's say in inheritance, she got, they gave her, let's say, a piece of property, right, a house or some jewelry. And now, after 2 years, 2 years after her husband passed away, she decides to marry someone else. So, what happens? The brothers of the deceased would come and say, no, you are not allowed to marry unless and until you return this jewelry to us, or you give this house to us. So, basically, they would cause problems for her if she wanted to remarry. So it is not permissible for you to inherit women. This means that it is not permissible for you to inherit their property, to take their property. So, O you who believe, treating a woman like she was your property, this is something unlawful for you. She is not an extension of you. She is not an extension of your family. You do not control her life. You do not control her choices. And this is especially reprehensible when the woman dislikes it. How can you force her to marry someone she does not want to? So we see over here, and we also learn from hadith and other verses in the Quran, that a widow gets to decide herself what she wants to do after her waiting period is over. Because when a man dies leaving behind a wife, then the wife has to observe a waiting period. And that is known as hidad, right? The waiting period of a widow. And that is 4 months and 10 days, as we learn in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 234. But then after the waiting period, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِذَا بَلَغْنَ أَجَلَهُنَّ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي مَا فَعَلْنَ فِي أَنفُسِهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. That once their waiting period is over, then basically let them do whatever they want, all right, in a way that is permissible, in a way that is appropriate. So basically, a widow gets to decide what she wants to do after her waiting period. If she wants to marry someone, let's say a relative of her deceased husband, that's fine. That's her choice. If she wants to marry someone who is, not from her in-laws, someone else completely, that is also fine. And if she does not want to remarry, that is also fine. It is her choice. It is her decision. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فِيمَا فَعَلْنَا فِي أَنفُسِهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. They can do whatever they want in regard to themselves in a manner that is appropriate, in a manner that is permissible. So it is her choice. It is not the choice of the heirs of the deceased, the brother of the deceased, or the father of the deceased, or the son of the deceased. It is the decision of the woman. She will decide what she wants to do. And we see that this ayah makes it very clear that a woman should not be forced to marry against her will. Because it is said, لا يحل لكم أن ترثوا النساء كرها. Karha, by compulsion, has been mentioned over here. So it is not correct to force a woman to marry someone that she does not want to. And that woman could be a widow, she could have been previously divorced, or she could never have been married. And it doesn't matter what her age is, what her history is. If she does not want to marry someone, she should not be forced to marry them. In a hadith, we learn that Khansa, a woman by the name of Khansa, she narrated about how when her father got her married to someone, and she disliked that. فَكَرِهَتْ ذَلِكَ. She disliked that, meaning she did not want to, be married to that person. She came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and complained to him, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam canceled. He revoked her marriage. He annulled her marriage. So remember that a woman's consent is necessary when it comes to nikah, when it comes to marriage. Other people do not get to decide this for her. Now we see that, some people, they ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that a young girl, a virgin, someone who's never been married, a young girl who's marrying for the first time, it's possible that she doesn't say anything. She's quiet. How is she supposed to give her consent? So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that her silence is her consent, meaning if she's quiet about it, because in some cultures this is the case, women are, they won't say anything. Especially younger girls, they're too shy to speak up, and they hesitate, and they're okay with the decision that the family is making, and they're shy to speak, in the sense that they're too shy to say, yes, I'm okay with this, yes, I would like to marry this person. It's too awkward for them. However, if a woman says that no, she does not want to marry a certain individual, whether she is young or older, previously married or not, then in that case, where she expresses her disapproval, then she cannot be forced into marrying someone. This would be unfair. And then it is said, وَلَا تَعْضُلُوهُنَّ لِتَذْهَبُوا بِبَعْضِ مَا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ. A second thing that is being mentioned over here is that it is not permissible for you, wala, meaning, and it is also not permissible for you to do what? That you ta'duluhunna, that you make difficulties for them, that you hamper them, لِتَذْهَبُوا بِبَعْضِ مَا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ, in order that you take away some of that which you gave them. Now here, specifically, men are being addressed, that it is not lawful for you to make difficulties for your wives, meaning to make their life so difficult and so miserable that they initiate the divorce then, and they take khul', and in that process they return the mahr. So this way you take away some of what you gave them, meaning you take the mahr back from them. You see, لا تعضلوهن, idlan is basically to prevent someone, to debar someone wrongfully, meaning you don't have the right to stop someone, but you stop them anyway from doing what they have a right to do. And adila is also, to compel someone, yani to make their life so difficult for them, because you are using force against them. And adila is said of a person, of a man, when he becomes very muscular. All right. So what is meant over here is that you do not treat the women harshly, and you don't make their lives so difficult. You should not straighten their circumstances in order to force them to forfeit some of their rights or to seek khula from you. And this is another form of injustice that unfortunately is very common today. That when a man does not have the intention of, staying married to his wife, he wants to separate from her. Then of course what he should do is he should give talaq, he should give divorce, right? But if he gives divorce, then what happens? The woman gets to keep the mahr that he gave her. However, if she takes divorce, meaning if she takes khula', then what happens? She has to give back the mahr that the man gave her. Because remember that this is the law, that when a man gives talaq, then he cannot take back any mahr that he gave her. In fact, we learned that a man has to give something to the woman when he divorces her. Because walil mutallaqat, that for all divorced women is a mata'un, is some kind of benefit, meaning some kind of monetary gift that he has to give her at the time of divorce. However, and this is mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, but if a woman wants to, take divorce, if a woman wants to initiate divorce, then she has to return the mahr. Why? Because she is the one who is leaving the marriage, right? And this is justice with the man, because he gave her mahr at the time of marriage. Now, let's say 2 days later, she says, you know what, I don't like you, bye. And she leaves. And he gave her, $20,000 as mahr. And now she leaves for no reason. She just says, I don't think I'm attracted to you. I don't think I like you, right? I don't think, I changed my mind. So, and she walks away with that 20,000, with that 10,000, whatever that, he gave her. So this is not fair to the man, right? So if the woman wants to leave the marriage, then what happens? She has to return the mahr, right? This is the law. And if the man wants to end the marriage, then he does not take back any mahr, because then that is not fair to the woman, that for no reason she is divorced. And now she is, left with no property, no family, no security, nothing. So remember that the law that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given is a just law. But no matter how just and how perfect a law is, there will always be people who will pick and choose, and they will find ways to manipulate others and to only do things that suit their desires. So here that, a loophole is being closed basically, that do not treat the women harshly, making their lives miserable so that you pressure them to leave, to end the marriage. Because if they end the marriage, then what? They have to return the mahr. لِتَذْهَبُوا بِبَعْضِ مَا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ. And this way, you take away some of that which you gave them, right? So we see that this happens today, that, for example, when a man wants to end the marriage, he will not give talaq, but what he will do is that he will, for example, completely abandon the woman, right? He will leave her. He will even kick her out of the house, right? He will not, for example, give her any money. He will not fulfill any of her needs. In fact, he will become abusive. He will beat her up. He will not allow her to, see her family. He will set strange conditions and rules for her until she feels suffocated. She feels manipulated, and she is actually suffering harm, and she decides that for her own well-being, for her own safety, in order to save her life basically, she has to get out of that marriage. And in order to get that marriage, she returns the mahr, and this way the man wins. So this is unfair, right? So it is said that it is not permissible for you to do this, which means that if a man does this, he is doing something unlawful. And remember that when something is haram, when something is unlawful, right, then that is a sin. Not just a minor sin, it becomes a major sin. And it is something that is punishable. If there's no legal punishment for it in the world, there is definitely punishment for that action in the hereafter. So this is a serious matter. إِلَّا أَن يَأْتِينَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ مُبَيِّنَةٍ. Except if they, meaning if the wife, commits a fahisha, an act of indecency, an act of immorality that is mubayyina, that is ever evident, very, very clear. So there's an exception over here. The only case where the man can, use some kind of social pressure to force the woman to take divorce, to take khula, is the case where the woman has done fahisha mubayyina. All right. And what is fahisha mubayyina? Fahisha mubayyina, clear fahisha, is, for example, zina. Okay. Or an illicit relationship, or abuse, defiance, and disobedience, and such things. So, for example, a man is married to a woman, and that woman, has a boyfriend, for example. And even if she's not sleeping with him, she's constantly, talking to him, and, eating out with him, and chatting with him, and sending selfies to him, and things like that. And the husband is, tries to stop her, advises her that this is not appropriate, and she simply does not care. Or she becomes very abusive. And this happens in cases where a woman is abusive towards the husband, where she not only becomes physically violent, she can use controlling speech or verbal abuse and things like that. In extreme cases, there is clear infidelity. So in that case, what is the man supposed to do? If he gives her divorce, right, then what happens? She takes away the property, and now he is left with nothing. So in this case, he can use some kind of social pressure in order to compel her to take khula. So, for example, he stops spending on her, right? He changes, the bank account details, for example, so that she cannot have access to any money, right? He goes and changes names on legal documents, etc. Basically, taking away any form of control from her. Why? To show her that, you're going to be on your own very soon, right? Or that he is a little harsh with her. Not that he should become abusive toward her, but that he is a little harsh with her, Why? To make her realize that, you know what, this is not going to continue. Or he sends her away. He tells her that, you know what, you cannot live here anymore. He leaves the house, for example, and ends the rent contract, right? And things like that. Every situation is unique. But of course, he should not commit any injustice. He should not commit any dhulm, but he can use some kind of, social pressure in order to compel her to seek divorce. And in that case, she will give the mahar back. However, this is only in the case of fahisha mubayyina, all right? Clear, evident immorality. And this is not something small, like she had an argument with him, or she refused to make dinner, or she said something like, you can do your own laundry, and he gets upset and he says, you know what, that's it, I'm going to end this, and I'm not going to be nice to her from now on anymore, so that she is forced to take khula. That would not be correct. It should not be over little things. It should only be over something major. But in general, the instruction is وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, and live with them with ma'ruf. Again, the instruction over here is to the husbands, that you should live with your wives. How? In a good manner, in a manner that is appropriate, in a manner that is acceptable, in a manner that is nice. And ma'ruf includes ma'ruf in speech, and ma'ruf in actions, meaning speak with them in a kind and decent and good way. Don't speak with them harshly, as if they were your servant. Do not speak with them as if they had no worth whatsoever. Speak with them in a ma'ruf way, in a kind way. And don't speak with them as if they were a stranger. No, speak with them like she is your wife, your partner, someone whom you're supposed to show affection to. So be loving in your speech. وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And this is not just in speech, but also in actions, right? That deal with her in a kind way, treat her kindly. So and this is for example, doing things around the house, or taking care of her needs. عاشرهن بالمعروف. And we see that the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was so beautiful. He was kind, he was cheerful with his wives. He would even joke with them. He was helpful. He would spend time with them. He would spend money on them. He would laugh with them, right? When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was home, he would not be busy in his own in his own work. No, we learn from Aisha radiallahu anha that he would be busy in the service of his family. But unfortunately, these days, what happens? People come home and they're on their phones, they're on their computers, they're in phone meetings, they are constantly ignoring their family, right? Or they're sitting in front of the television, or they are busy with one thing or another, and then they complain that how come my wife doesn't like me, or how come my wife doesn't listen to me, or how come she is upset, or how come she's ignoring me, or how come I don't have a very strong bond with her. Well, that's because you're not putting much in the relationship. وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. You have to put something, you have to invest something in the relationship if you want something out of it. Paying for the bills is not enough. Yes, that is your obligation, but beyond that, how do you sit with her? How do you talk to her? How do you hang out with her? These are things that a person must pay attention to. Likewise, part of this ashiruhunna bil ma'ruf, live with them in a kind way, is that you make your appearance nice for them as much as you can. Trim your your hair. For example, some men don't care about their mustache or their beard. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would comb it. He would take care of it, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have perfume on, right? His body would be clean. He would bathe. His clothes would not be smelling. He would dress nicely. It doesn't mean that you have to be very lavishly, dressed all the time, etc. But wear decent clothing. Look nice for your spouse. These days, because people are working from home sometimes, and we all need to pay attention to this, that the entire day goes into wearing pajamas. The entire day goes into, uh, you know, uh, being dressed as if you are in bed. Yes, you can wear comfortable clothing, but you can also comb your hair. You can also put some perfume on. You can also make sure that you have showered. So وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, that women have the same rights as the rights that they owe to their husbands. Meaning, if a woman is supposed to dress well, be clean, etc., in her body, have makeup, etc., on for her husband, well, the husband should also take care of his appearance for his wife. وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And عَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, this also includes intimate relationships. That a lot of times when it comes to sexual relationship, the focus is solely on the man's pleasure. وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, live with them in a nice way. Don't just be concerned about fulfilling your own sexual desire. Be concerned about her as well. وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And this includes spending on her. So remember that ma'roof, kindness, this is something that varies from culture to culture and even individual to individual. People have their own love languages. So try to find out what the love language of your spouse is, how they feel loved, right? What they need to hear from you, what they need to see from you, what they need from you in order to feel loved in their relationship. So, وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And this is the opposite of harming them. So, this relationship, of marriage is not a relationship where, there is abuse and harm. No, it's the exact opposite. You should live in kindness. So do not harm her, neither through words nor through behavior. Rather, live in a nice and good way. So this means don't be moody all the time. Don't be upset all the time, getting irritated and annoyed at every little thing. And also, don't be so distant that you are so difficult to talk to, so difficult to, have a connection with. And don't be harsh. And sometimes, a mistake that men make is that, they're sitting with their wife and they're texting their, coworker. For example, a woman that they work with, and this is very upsetting for the wife, that this is not the time when you are at work. You are at home, you're sitting with me. Why are you chatting? Why are you talking for so long, laughing and joking and sending emojis and things like that to a woman? How can you do that? And sometimes men will follow other women on social media, and they will be liking their selfies, etc. This is not appropriate. This is against ma'ruf. So, even when it comes to coworkers, there should be some kind of professionalism with female coworkers so that your wife does not feel insecure. وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. We learn in a hadith that a man asked the Prophet ﷺ that what are the rights of a woman over her husband? What an intelligent man. He asked the Prophet ﷺ, may Allah bless this man, that what are the rights of the woman over her husband? He didn't ask that what are the rights of the man, right? He's asking, what am I supposed to give to my wife? What is an obligation on me? And the Prophet ﷺ replied that أَن يُطْعِمَهَا إِذَا طَعِمَ, that he should feed her as he feeds himself. And some men, mashallah, they're so good with this, that when they go out to eat, let's say even with their friends, they will make sure they will bring something for their wife at home. So this is excellent, that أن يطعمها إذا طعم, that he should feed her as he feeds himself. وأن يكسوها إذا اكتسى, and he should clothe her as he clothes himself. Meaning, same standard. Not that a man is only concerned about what clothes he's going to buy, what sweater, what jacket, what shoes, what this, what that, so into fashion. And his wife, she's wondering, can I even ask my husband to get me a new jacket because my jacket is, 6 years old, it's old, it doesn't, keep me warm anymore. She's debating, she's wondering what she can do. And the husband is thinking about how he can fulfill his fashion dreams. This is not fair. And you see a lot of women, especially when they're married, they don't necessarily work. They don't have a source of income. So financially, they are dependent on their husbands. Some women continue to work, they have their own source of income, right? But many women, and this is the case with majority of women, they are financially dependent on their husbands because they have chosen to give up their careers in order to look after the children. So in that case, uh, especially where the woman does not have that financial means, the husband should pay special attention to her needs. And even if she has a source of income, and this is important, even if a woman is financially independent, even if, let's say, she makes more money, all right, than the husband still has to spend on her. The same rule applies, that he should be spending on the groceries, on the food, and he should be spending on her wardrobe as well. Now, of course, this is bil ma'ruf, in a way that is appropriate, in a way that is acceptable. What the man can afford easily, and what is acceptable in that culture, according to the standard that they live by. And then the Prophet ﷺ also mentioned وَلَا يَضْرِبَ الْوَجْهِ, that he should not strike her on her face. وَلَا يُقَبِّحْ, and he should not verbally abuse her. وَلَا يَهْجُرْ إِلَّا فِي الْبَيْتِ, and he should not abandon her except in the house. Meaning, if he's really upset with her, let's say they had a fight, they had an argument, he's super annoyed, he can go out and spend the whole day out of the house away from her if he wants his own space, but he should not tell her to leave the house. He should not kick her out of the house. This is not correct. So these are the rights of a woman, that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in this narration. And we also learned that the Prophet ﷺ said that the most perfect man in his faith among the believers is the one whose behavior is most excellent. And the best of you are those who are the best to their wives. So you see, this is directly related to a person's faith. How a person treats their spouse is directly going to affect the level of their iman. And the Prophet ﷺ also said that dinarun anfaqtahu fi sabilillah. There is a dinar, a gold coin that you spend in the way of Allah, and another dinar that you spend in order to free a slave, and another dinar you spend on a person in need, and there is another dinar which you spend on your family. So imagine now there's a person who spent on all of these things. Okay, they spent in the way of Allah, to a masjid. They gave a donation to a masjid. They gave a donation to help, people in need. And then they spent on their family. They paid for their wife's jacket or purse, for example. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ said that the one spent in support of your family brings the greatest reward. Out of all the different things that you spend on, what is most rewardable for you? What you spend on your family, on your wife. Why? Because that is an obligation on you. A man has to spend on his wife. So when he spends on his wife, he is rewarded, right? And when he spends on those in need, for example, that is excellent, but that is voluntary charity. So some people think that if they're spending on their families, they are kind of wasting their money, right? Or they're not getting much benefit out of their money. They think I would, I could have, saved up to go for another umrah. I could have, if I was on my own, if I didn't have to spend on my wife, I could have given $500 donation every month to the masjid. And I feel like I'm missing out on all of that reward. But we see over here that when a person spends on their family, that brings more reward compared to what they would spend in other avenues. And this is a hadith in Sahih Muslim. So وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. This is extremely important. And then it is said فَإِنْ كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ. And if you were to dislike them, again, the men are being addressed, that if you hate your wife, if there's something about your wife that you dislike a great deal, and yes, it is possible. It is possible for a man to dislike something about his wife. We think that love and marriage, is supposed to be something perfect. So it's all or nothing. Either you completely and absolutely love your spouse or you cannot be with them. However, this is not how reality is. Because you see, no human being is perfect. No matter how nice of a person, a woman is, there might be something about her that the husband dislikes. And it's possible that, it's not a problem within her, all right? But it's something that annoys him. For example, the way that a person talks, all right? The way that they laugh, for instance. It's not necessarily, a bad thing to laugh in a certain way, or to have a certain tone of voice. A person, did not choose that for themselves, but that's just how they are. So they're not bad for laughing a certain way. They're not bad for having a certain tone of voice. But that tone of voice is a source of irritation for another. Is that possible? Yes, it is. Does that make them a bad person? No, each person is different. So sometimes there are things about your spouse really that you do not like. It could be the way that they cook, it could be the way that they walk, it could be the way that they breathe, it could be that the way that they blow their nose, it could be that the way that they chew their food. It could be the fact that they forget to do laundry. They forget to, put their dishes away, or that they talk a lot, or that they nag a lot, or that they're too particular about certain things, or that they're not particular at all about certain things. Hmm? Or for example, a man has certain, dreams, certain goals that, when I get married, I'm gonna make sure that my wife does makeup every day, and she knows how to do good makeup. And poor woman, he finds out after the marriage that she doesn't even know how to put eyeliner, and she doesn't like it, right? Or she doesn't want to. He wanted a super romantic relationship, and she's not the type, because you really get to know a person after you are married to them, right? So, فَإِن كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ. So, yes, it is possible that you dislike something about your wife. And even if you hate it, you hate that thing about her, even if you hate that bad habit, right? Then remember that that she is not a bad person. Her one trait does not fully define her. So don't just focus on what you dislike about her, because there's more to a person than the thing that you dislike about them. So فَإِن كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ, because usually people, are rude to their spouse, or they become, cheap with their spouse when they dislike something about their spouse, right? So even if that is the case, then فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. It is quite possible that you dislike something and Allah makes in it a lot of good. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bring a lot of good through something that you dislike. So you don't know what good lies what good there is for you in something that you dislike. So don't reject things, don't leave things just because there's something about them that you dislike. You don't know all the good that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept in store for you in that particular thing. So uh, over here, basically, men are being exhorted that you continue to treat your wife in a good way, in an excellent way, and ignore the thing that you dislike about your wife. And وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Allah can put something good in it. Allah can make something good through it. What could that good be? You see, sometimes there's something about your spouse that you dislike, but that very trait about them is actually good for you. How? For example, a woman wants her husband to be very particular and, make sure that everything in the house is fixed. uh, Things are being done quickly. She wants furniture moved, he moves it right away. She wants a room painted, he paints it right away. She wants, a shelf to be moved, he moves it right away. She wants the snow to be removed, he removes it right away. He does all of these things immediately. That's her dream. All right. But he's not the type, right? She can remind him 10 times that, please clean the snow, please put these things away, please get the house painted, please get this done, please get that done. And he doesn't do it. So, yes, it is very, very annoying. It is very, very annoying. And I'm not saying if the husband does something like that, it's okay. No, it's not okay. But you know what? In in that could be something good for a woman. Because imagine if her husband was also a lot into housekeeping, then what would happen? Both of them would be constantly obsessed with maintaining their house. Their time, their energy, their money would go into maintaining their house. And the other things that they're capable of doing, like for example, memorizing Quran or helping out in the community, they would neglect that. So, sometimes a deficiency in your spouse, as difficult as it is to bear, is in fact good for you. It is good for you. And it doesn't mean that what they're doing is okay, what they're neglecting is okay. It just means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enabled that test for you for your own good. Likewise, we see that, some men, they get super annoyed when their wife is constantly, nagging them. So, for example, a husband gets annoyed that the wife is nagging her, is nagging him. As soon as he enters the house, did you wash your hands? Can you put this away? Can you do this? Can you do that? Did you pay the bill? Did you do that? As if she knows more about his life than he does. And you know what? It might be annoying, but it's actually good for him, because imagine if she did not remind him, his life would be a mess, right? His matters, his finances, etc., would not be in order. So, فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Remember, this life is a test. And sometimes we are tested through the people that we love, the people who are closest to us. And it doesn't mean that what they're doing is okay. They're responsible for their neglect, right? They're responsible for their harshness. They are responsible for their, for the way that they're irritating you, if they do that by choice. But uh, remember that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed that test for you, there is goodness in it for you. فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Right? A man, for example, wants that his wife is always, uh, you know, uh, she always has her hair done. She always has perfect makeup on. She's always wearing nice clothes, and she's not into that kind of stuff. And imagine if she was, and she's spending $300 a month on makeup and $200 on her hairstyle, $500 on her wardrobe, and then dry cleaning, etc. His money would disappear. It would evaporate. So, uh, Yani, there are things in your marriage that you do not like. Yes. And each person, who's married should recall those things in their marriage that they don't like. But remember that these things should not be the highlight and the focus of your marriage. These annoying things are there. These disappointments are there. But you know what? Perhaps they're there for your own good and also for your own growth. Because when you are constantly practicing patience and self control, right? That, for example, you are annoyed by the way that your spouse talks to you, right? You get really irritated by a certain expression that they use, and you know that if you correct them, if you say something, they're going to get hurt, they're going to get annoyed. So you just stay quiet. You practice self control, you practice patience. Then that constant sabr is good for you. You are exhibiting good akhlaq, right? You are exhibiting self control. And فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. There might be something that you dislike about your wife. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said that, it's possible that the husband dislikes his wife, but then eventually there comes a point where he likes her, right? Because marriage is not just about, romance. It's about forming a relationship that is a source of strength for you, a source of fulfilling life dreams for you. And eventually, down the road, after a lot of turmoil, you begin to appreciate one another and you begin to see how, an excellent supporter your spouse has been. So eventually, he feels compassion towards her. And it's possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him a child with her, and this child carries tremendous goodness, right? That, okay, she may not be a good cook. Every time she prepares some food, you regret asking her to, cook food. There's disappointment, right? But the way that she teaches your child, the way that she raises your child, she teaches her, for example, how to recite Quran, and she and he becomes a hafiz. How excellent is that for you? So it's possible you dislike something, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bring a lot of good out of it for you. So Allah is telling you over here that you should still be good to her. So remember that there are things about a spouse that may be unbearable, right? Completely unbearable. And in that situation, yes, a person is allowed to end the marriage. All right. And this could be on the part of a woman and it could also be on the part of the man. And both options are there. However, a person should not think about ending the marriage just because they are disappointed over one thing or another. All right. Every little thing is not a reason for divorce. It is not a reason for ending the marriage. All right. Think about it. There is no human being that is perfect. They will be a test for you. They will have their deficiencies, their errors, their mistakes, their imperfections. So just because you dislike one thing about your wife, it does not mean that you have to end the marriage. Remember that with difficulty is ease, and after difficulty is ease. And it's possible that you dislike something, and in fact, it is good for you. Therefore, live in a nice way. Live with ma'ruf. We learned that the Prophet ﷺ said that a believing man should not hate a believing woman. If he dislikes one of her characteristics, he will be pleased with another. And it's possible that you dislike something about her, but isn't there something about her that you also appreciate, that you like? So focus on what you like and learn to ignore what you dislike and remind yourself, this is just my test. And uh, also, it is not nice to continue to suffer in silence. If there's something that is bothering you, that is becoming really heavy on you, really unbearable, communicate that with your spouse. Try to resolve that issue. Seek marriage counseling. Why? Because this relationship is an important relationship. It should be a source of sukoon, not a source of constant turmoil and pain. So if it's causing you pain, if it's causing you disappointment, then try to fix that. And a lot of problems are fixed through communication. So communicate. If you cannot communicate directly, seek marriage counseling. Don't go on telling every friend and relative. No, go to a person who is a professional, who is able to give you proper advice, who is able to listen to you and make you aware of your own deficiencies as well, so that you can work on them. And also speak to your spouse and advise them also in order to help you improve your relationship. But every problem does not mean that the marriage has to be ended.